in the semester, I think we find renewed energy, believe it or not, even though it's the last, like it's the last 4 weeks, we really find new excitement because this excitement's going to be this because of what's being learned, right? Because of breaks coming up, right? And so I think a lot of people do something energized, like the last 2 weeks of class. So yeah, sometimes it's pretty neat to see. So we actually put that last ditch effort in. So I do a lot of extra credit, and a lot of different things to boost the grade and so forth. Today, I was going to cover a few concepts here. Like I said, some of these concepts that we're going to cover today are very basic, but kind of going over the for statement, the if, the while statement. So it's like iteration, right? Looping. Also decision-making structures, such as if statements, if else statements, and so forth. And so we'll cover some of those things today, and then we'll get back into our class example and do some and further expound on our example for the delivery zone calculator. So, before we get started with that, how's everybody's project going with assignment number 5 and assignment number 6? How's that going?
Still playing work.
Yeah. I said some of them should be pretty straightforward, right? Just the shell, and obviously it's the UI component of the application. And then obviously assignment number 6 is going to be the fully functional application. I encourage you to get started early. So even though assignment 5 and 6 is the UI and just the shell of the application and the write-up, be as detailed as possible in your write-up, right? It's okay to give me a 2-page essay, right? Just don't give me a 1-page one paragraph write-up, right? But share with me about the details of your application, what data you're going to collect, what you're going to do with that data, what's going to be the intended outcome of your application, and so forth. But I would say, I would encourage you guys to actually get started early on actually the programming of the application, so you don't feel rushed after assignment number 5. What are some other ideas? I know we have a budget. What's some other ideas of applications that people are doing? At this point, people should have a good idea of what they're going to build. What are some other ideas out there? So we got a pun generator.
I'm doing a.
Who's going to money converter? Okay.
I'm doing a calculator to add on to my personal website that we made earlier.
Okay, calculator. Nice.
It's more like a compiler. It's not like all the math functions, but it's for playoff and for things like this.
Okay. Nice. Good deal. All right, so this reminder that's due tomorrow night, right? 11 p.m. I was push over to the server, and I was push the zip file over to Canvas. Yes, let's go ahead and dig in here. Like I said, this is some basic concepts. A lot of these things that you kind of do on the board here, you've already seen. Like I said, I'm kind of, my teacher style at this point, I do things repetitiously, if that's a word, right? I say the same things over and over again with the hopes of that it'll stick or it'll kind of do the thing, right? And so we'll talk about the if statements, for loops, while statements, and so forth. Yesterday we talked about the length properties. Whatever you attach the length property to, it's going to give you the size of it, right? So if you attach it to an array, it's going to give you the size of the array. If you attach it to a particular variable, there's a string, it's going to give you the size of that string, right? So if you say, if a variable is holding the name Bob, the string value, it's going to give you 3, right? A lot of times, like I said, that's a useful property, array property that's used a lot in JavaScript. Not only in JavaScript, but a number of different languages. Like I mentioned yesterday, this is one of the objects that I regret not put on the quiz. Next semester is going to be on the quiz. Like so we say the document object, we say the screen object, we say the location object, we say the window object, but the array object is one of them that we're going to add to the quiz. But like I said, it's one that's used a lot depending on what you're doing in your program. Let's take a look at it real quick here. So, WTC schools, I think I already have it pulled up. Actually, this is the math class, which is also very useful. For those who are doing like random generation of like puns, right? You may want to use a random function. That allows you to basically, it's a function that allows it calls random things in there. You can actually do a random string or random phrase right? But you may want to actually consider using a random function. If you have some type of functionality of sorts in your application. If I scroll back here and I go back to the array function, inside array object, you'll see that the array object has various properties. Here's the length property, right? Returns the number of elements in the array. But also here's the array, some of the methods associated with the array object, right? So push, pop, reverse, index of, and so forth. Like I said, I'll probably adjust the quiz, the JavaScript quiz, to actually include this one and the math object for next year's quiz. Right? There's some very useful things there. But here's the syntax. If we wanted to create a new instance of an array, we can say declare a variable called var new sections equals new array. Because this will be a declaration and initialization of a new instance of an array. You see me do this with the date object, right? When I said var date equals new date, and it basically returned the date, right? So if I went to JS Fiddle here, and I said, let's go to JS Fiddle, and I say var date equals new, and then a date object, right? Now I would output, let's say alert date, right? What do you think it's going to give me? So give me December 6, 2016. So it's pulling the date object from, I believe our local machine, right? I want to introduce a new method that's part of the document object. It's get by tag name. And the get by tag name essentially returns an array. An array of all the elements that, basically all the elements that you specify as a parameter for this particular method. So if you were to pass in li, it'll basically put all of the li's that you have in your HTML document to an array. It'll start from the top and it'll go all the way down to the bottom and say, we get your first li and say you're going to be in position 0. The second one is going to be in position 1. The third in position 2, and so forth. So basically, it'll index all of your list items. If you said get all the A tags, right, it's going to index all of your A tags. So you can say go like tag name, and then put A. It's going to index all the A elements, right, within your HTML document, and assign it to a particular position within an array. And you'll see the usefulness of that later on. I'll do a few examples of that. Well, I'll show you a few examples in the slides here. Here are a few statements. You have the while statement, the do while statement, and then obviously the for statement. These allow you to basically do some iteration, right? You can iterate over data, you can iterate over in particular statements of code, right? The do and the for statement are pretty much the same thing, right? It's just how you actually code it out, right? The for statement, you basically code it out in one statement. So you do an initial value, an actual condition, and then an increment of decrement value as well. So we're doing an example of both. And the do while is essentially you run a code at least once, and then you check the condition, right? Sometimes you want to do this with error checking, where you want the end user to actually run a code at least once without a condition, and then you would check the condition after that person has ran a code at least once. Right? Here's the syntax for a while statement. While this condition is true, do these statements. It could be 500 statements here, or it could just be one, right? But while this condition is true, this condition may be like while x is not equal to 5, right? While days of the week is not equal to 7, right? Or while x is equal to 2, right? But we have to formulate the condition that we want to check against. While this condition is true, always go into the block. If it's not true, skip the block and then run the next statement. Here it talks about kind of like the counter variable or the incrementing or decrementing. You can actually add 1, -2, you can decrement through it, you can increment through it. You can actually do the multiplication equal operator, where you can actually multiply by 2 up to a particular statement, and so forth. Here's an example of basically using a while statement. Let me just copy this information here and go to code of JS Fiddle. I'll run it in the browser. I'm going to change the document.write to alert. And I'll get rid of the HTML code here. Same here. And I'll get rid of this guy.
You got 16 at the top.
Oh, let's get rid of that. Thanks. So if I run this here, right, basically what's happening is I'm going to have an initial value that I want to start at, which is going to be 1. Right, it's going to go to this condition. It's going to say, is this condition true? Is 1 less than or equal to 5? Right? Is that condition true?
Yes.
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 Right? Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Output count. And count is going to hold the value of 1 at this moment. Then it'll increment and output the various numbers. So if I run this, you'll see that's going to output 1. Click OK. 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And it's going to then output, we have printed 5 numbers. But the condition is no longer true. Right? So that's a simple example of a while loop, right? Where we actually have to iterate through it at least 5 times. But this is basically the initial value starting at 1. Here's a condition, and then here's the increment value that's going to iterate through that while loop. Here's an example of actually decrementing through it, right? We can start at 10 and go all the way down to 0, right? And then we can actually do the value minus. Right? What's another way of actually writing count minus?
Another way?
What's another way of writing this here? Count minus.
Count minus count. Or count minus.
It would be count equals count minus 1. Right? So if we had count plus plus, it would be count equals count plus. That's the way we're used to normally looking at it, right? But this would be a shorthand way of doing that, where we just minus 1. This example here basically multiplies, right? And so it's going to increment by a division, multiplication of 2. So it's going to iterate through this while loop. It's going to output these values, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64. An infinite loop, understand what an infinite loop is. You'll see this in the final exam, right? And so an infinite loop is basically where we don't have that increment or decrement value, but we go into the condition is true, and then there's no way of getting out of that block of statement because it's going to always be true. There's nothing to basically get back or to say that that condition is false. And so we'll continually iterate until the condition is no longer true. But in a while, like I said, in the infinite loop, you will never get out of it, right? I think I told you guys yesterday, if you want to test this out, go ahead and test this out. Or run this block of code here, just copy it, and put it in JS and see what happens, right?
My crash.
It crashed, the browser, right? And then here's an example of actually using the elements by tag name, where we would actually target, if we had a table, right? We want to target all the table headers within our HTML table. And then we can actually, it'll basically put each one into an array. And then within the inner HTML, we want to give the days of the week, right? So we'll say days of the week, it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up until 6. I don't know you want to sign it 0. Here's the example of a do while, right? Do the code at least once. I'm not going to check for condition, but do the code at least once and then check for the condition, right? What would be a good example of that? Or what is the usefulness of that? So I want to Google it and see why was somebody using do while? What's the usefulness of a do while? How is it used in actual applications? What do you get?
So let's see.
Like find
because it like does something until it finds like something that's false, until the condition's false, basically. So, like,
And so you're gonna run through the code at least once, right? And it's a good use for error checking, right? Until the condition is do this while this condition is true. If it's false, then obviously move on. Here's some examples of that. I'm gonna keep moving kind of fast here because I'm gonna get to my class example. So here's the syntax for the for statement, right? The for statement is pretty much the same thing as the while loop. It's just how you actually, it's actually, the thing that's different is the syntax, right? So we go back to JS Fiddle here. I'm gonna write the same statement here. I'm actually gonna do this with a for loop, right? Well, watch what I do here. You've already seen me do a for loop here, so I say for, and then I'm gonna copy this statement here, where I'm gonna start, right? I'm gonna copy the condition, and then I'm gonna copy the increment value or variable here. The semicolon here, and then I'm going to copy this guy here, alert count. I'm just going to just do this after the while loop is over, the for loop is over. And say, yeah, put it on using a for loop. Right, so it's keep the same results as the while loop. Right, the for loop is just a different way of declaring it, or a different way of initializing, a different syntax of basically iterating through these statements here, right? So let's run this and see what we get. For our while loop, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then obviously the condition is no longer true because 5 is not equal to 5. That is true, so we get that, but then obviously it's going to go up to 6, so that's not the case. So it's going to basically go outside of the block here, and then output, you have to print 5 numbers using the while loop, right? And then we'll go down to our next statement, and then we're going to do it for a for loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to say you have printed 5 numbers using the for loop, right? So some basic statements here, right? But I'll use these examples here that we're doing in class, in my class example for the pizza delivery application, all right? So that's the for statement, right? Kind of the same thing as the while statement. It's just where you actually specify the increment value, the condition, and then the iteration. Here's an example of this iterating through some stars. We actually have an array, and then we're going to iterate through these stars using a for loop. You'll see me do this as well. When I'm going to declare an array of zip codes that we deliver to for Arden Hills, an array of zip codes that we deliver to for Minneapolis, and then when that end user inputs their zip code, right, we're going to check against that array to see if that information is within that array. If it's not, then we're going to say we're going to deliver to that zip code. But if it is, yes, we deliver to that zip code, right? So this is we'll put some of this into practice when we actually do our class example here. All right, so let's move on to decision making here. I believe this is correct if you guys are doing decision making, if-else statements, else-if, right, in Python, right? So let's talk about how to do this within JavaScript, right? It's very basic concepts here, right? But if statements allows us to make decisions, right? And so if, and you'll see here if I go to the next slide, you'll see that's the most common type of decision making statement is used a lot in programming. I keep doing that. I'm sorry, here's the syntax. If this condition is true, go into this block of code and run these statements, right? And then there's something called an if-else statement here. I think I skipped one slide here. Oh, so here we go. Go back. So if this condition is true, go into this block here, and what this else is saying, if this condition is not true, run the statements here within this block of code, right? So it's kind of like a decision tree. And then you'll see on the next slide here where we're saying, here we have var today equals Tuesday. If today is equal to Monday, output this, else output Tuesday is not Monday. Today is not Monday. So here we have this simple statement, right? Anybody know what this 3 equal signs mean?
Is that absolute? Like
Yeah, pretty much like an absolute strict comparison, right? For instance, let's do an example of this. What's the difference between a 2 and a 3? It's an absolute, but kind of explain what does that do? What's the whole point of that? Right? Let's work one out here. For instance, if I go to this guy here, let's actually copy, let's get rid of this guy here. Let's say var number 1 is equal to 1. Let's say var number 2 is equal to this 1. Right? And we say if this condition, which is going to be number 1, is equal to number 2, we say alert. We can compare a string value with a numeric value. Else, alert, we cannot compare a string value with a numeric value. Right, so here we have 2 variables. One is going to be a numeric value 1, and then this next variable is going to be a string value 1, right? What I'm doing is demonstrating the difference between the 2 equal signs versus the 3 equal signs, right? So here's a condition. If number 1 is equal to number 2, output this. How many people do you think is going to actually output the first block here? We can compare a string value with a numeric value. Raise your hand if you think it's going to output the first one there. Raise your hand if you think it's going to output the second one here.
We cannot.
Do you have no takers?
It's number 2.
All right. So let's go ahead and run this.
It's number 2. Can't compare this.
It says we can compare a string value with a numeric value, right? So in JavaScript, when you use the 2 equal signs, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't matter. It can compare a numeric value with a string value, right? But when you do a strict equal or strict comparison, it has to be the same data type. So let's go ahead and change this to 3 equal signs here, and let's run it and see what we get. We cannot compare a string value with a numeric value, right? So that's the difference between the 2 equal signs and the 3 equal signs. The 3 equal signs, it has to be a strict comparison. In the sense that we compare, we have to do a data type compared against another data type. Obviously, with this one here, we can do a 2 equal signs if we want to compare a numeric value with a string value. So as we look at this here, we're going to say if today is equal to Tuesday, right? I'm sorry, we declare a variable called today is equal to Tuesday, and then we do a comparison, a strict comparison, on 2 different string values. If Tuesday is equal to Monday, right, that's not a true statement, so it's going to skip this first one here and output the else statement, right? So it's a traditional decision structure that we can do here. All right, let's pause there. Let's put up our class example here. right, so here's our code that we started working on yesterday, right? We basically we had an add event listener, and we had an anonymous function within that add event listener. We created two different functions. So we got rid of the anonymous function, and we basically created two main functions, right? We created the mini map, and we created the arting map, right? So once somebody clicks on the mini map, the image, we're going to run these statements of code, right? And then obviously if somebody clicks on the arting map, we're going to remove the mini map and then display the zip code, right? So that's one of the changes that we made yesterday, is basically made these into name functions instead of anonymous functions. The other thing that we did here was basically we created this define, this function here called validate zip, right? And so we want to basically check, once the end user actually inputs their zip code into that text box, when they press the enter key, which is 13, key code 13, right? We want to make sure that they actually enter 5 characters, right? It can't be 2 characters, it can't be more than 5 characters. It has to be exactly 5 characters, right? So one of the things that we discovered yesterday is that this is how we would actually target the element, the text box, right? So we'll say get element by ID, get the zip, the ID of that text box, and obviously get the value. Once we get the value of that text box, we want to get the length of whatever they entered, right? And so we're going to attach the length property onto the zip that we got for the value of that text box. And then we're going to set it to a new variable called zip length. And here what we're going to do is basically we're going to figure out whether or not zip length is if it's not equal to 5, we're going to give an alert and say, hey, you didn't enter 5 characters. You didn't enter 5 characters for your zip code. Please re-enter your value, right? So here, let's go and do that. We have our if statement here. One thing that we missed is this basically alert message and say alert. Zip code needs to be 5 characters long. It needs to be 5 characters. Right, so when it's not 5 characters, this is the message that we should see. And when it is 5 characters, we shouldn't see the alert box, right? And this is the assignment that we would use for not equals, right? We're almost done with this function. One of the things I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to return something from this function. One of the things I'm actually getting from my text box is actually the value. I actually want to return some information from this function. And the one thing I want to return is actually the value that the end user inputs, so I can use that value in other places within my program, right? So I want to reuse the return statement here. So return. And what do I want to return here?
Zip that value?
The zip, right? Because I want to return, I want to use some information that I'm gathering from this module, which is what the end user actually input for the zip code. So I want to return the zip code here. I want to use that zip code in other places within my program, right? So pretty much my validate zip function is complete at this moment. There's nothing else I need to do at this point. So that's a module that's complete. I can call that module at any time. It's going to run those statements when I call it, right? So right now I just defined it. Let's go ahead and actually call this function in our code. I'll show you guys the suite alert page. Let me just show you that real quick. One of the things I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to experiment with actually a new JavaScript library. Not a new JavaScript library. I never done it before, but it's called Suite Alert. I'm going to add it in right now. I'm just going to do the basic functionality of it. Let me just navigate to Suite Alert here. So here's Suite Alert. If you just Google Suite Alert, it should bring you to this URL. I think you took the first one. But Suite Alert is basically it's a JavaScript library that takes a modern spin on the alert box. It basically kind of gives you this fresh UI, this fresh user interface for the alert box. So here you'll see if I scroll down, right? That's a lot different than a regular traditional alert box. right? So you can use this functionality within your application when you actually want to alert some message to the end user. Instead of using just a simple alert, right? So I'm going to use one of these guys here, this library, to basically alert the end user that their zip code is not 5 characters long. Like I said, this is a good way of actually adding some style to the end user. I think they'll much more appreciate this than just an alert box, right? Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool library. And feel free within your applications to use a number of different, whether it's jQuery libraries, JavaScript libraries within your application. Feel free to use those, right? So it's pretty neat. And so I'll eventually add Sweet Alert to this. Right now, I'm just concerned about the functionality, so I'm just going to actually alert this information out to the window. But there's a term called progressive enhancement, where we'll continually enhance this project to make it better, use some JavaScript libraries and things of that nature to basically improve the end user's experience. Remember that term, progressive enhancement, and it will be on the final exam. All right, so I've defined my function here. I've actually defined it, but I want to call this function now. If I open my code, where should I call this function at? Yeah, what would I want to call this at here? Yep, so yeah, you're exactly right, Trent. So I have this function called check address that's going to get invoked. I have this this attribute, event attribute in my HTML code here. It's kind of like inline. On key press, when I press that enter button, right? So on the key press event, run the check zip function, right? So this is where I'm calling that function, which is that the check zip. So I'll call the check zip, which is this function here. As soon as I call that check zip function, it's going to go into an if statement. It's going to basically say if the key code is equal to 13, which is the return key, right? On my keyboard, all of our keys have a particular code, right? The shift key is 16, the 1 key is something, like 2 key is something, and so forth. But the shift key, the return key is number 13. If on the key press event, that key code is 13, run this block of code, right? So whenever somebody presses the key code 13, I want to basically trigger my validate function. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to call my function validate zip code. And then down here, I'll say validate zip. And that's where I'll call my function at, right? When I validate that zip code, they've already entered in a value. Now I'm going to check whether or not they've actually entered 5 values or not, right? So let's run this to see if it actually functions the way that we would intend for it to function. So let's save this. Let's render this in the browser. So here's our application. Let's click on Minneapolis. Let's do 5. Let's hit enter. That's correct. That's the functionality that we want, all right? So we only hit enter 2 characters, and so we want it to actually alert a box there, right? To say that that's not 5 characters. Let's test this again here. Let's actually enter more than 5 characters, and so let's enter 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We should still get the alert box. That's what we want, right? So as you're building the application, test it out to make sure that it's working, right? So here we get the functionality, but now let's test to make sure that it doesn't trigger when we only have 5 characters. So let's go back. 2, let's add 3 more 5s here. And if we hit enter, we only have 5, right? We shouldn't get an error or an alert box. We don't, and that's what we want, right? We don't want an alert box of just 5 characters. So our application is functioning the way that we want it to function, or the way that we intend for it to function. So peace. All right. Hey, let's go to the end right there. Tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll cover a few more slides and then we'll continue to flush this example out. Like I said, tomorrow is the due date for assignment number 5. Make sure you push it over to the server and also push the zip file over to Canvas. Before we leave out here, are there any questions regarding what we covered today? So we covered a lot. We covered some basic statements, the for statement, the while statement, the if statement, if else statement, right? We did a review of the domain property, right? Like I said, feel free to use all those within your program as you're building out your application. Like I said, I'll continue to actually do some examples with our past examples of some of those different concepts that we put in class. All right, see you guys tomorrow.